I could communicate my value. I had the value as well, and then I was in the right spot. So I was in the right room. If you do those three things, you're going to be successful no matter what type of thing you do. If you're selling land and you're in the right room and you can provide value, you're going to get the deal.
Welcome to the Big Picture Blueprint. Mason, how's it going?
It's going well. We had a fun trip out in Vegas for a couple of interviews, and it's October. It's 40 degrees outside. Everything is great. Business is going strong into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, 40 degrees. Really? It's that cold?
It's cold. It's cold out here, and probably by the time this episode comes out, it is going to be even colder. But that's what you get for leaving Colorado and moving to California and getting used to 70-degree weather, man.
Yeah, I'm getting soft out here. But anyways, guys, this is the second episode we recorded when we were in Las Vegas a month or two ago, and we have Javi Chavez on this episode. So Javi oversees, he's the COO of all of Ryan's subsidiary companies. So he's got over 10 years of experience in sales and operations, quite the background for being a pretty young guy. He also hosts the Wealthy Business podcast. If you haven't listened to that, check it out. And we really enjoyed this episode because we got to do a deep dive into how he's managing, 40 plus employees, 5 different companies, keeping everything in line when he's got a visionary like Ryan who has all kinds of ideas and pivots and changes that he has to go implement, right? That's not easy. That's what Mason and I are both bad at. So I was excited to do this interview, and I thought we got a lot of useful information for our own businesses, and I think the listeners will feel the same way as well. So here it is. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Javi Chavez, my friend. How's it going?
Dude, it's so good. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's exciting to get to do it in person. So if you guys aren't watching on YouTube, feel free to check us out on YouTube right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're at Pineda Co. In Vegas. It is extraordinarily hot, but we're excited to be here. So, Javi, before we get into the specifics of everything, just tell us about yourself. How did you get from a kid in California to where you are today?
Yeah. So I'll kind of start from where I'm at now and kind of work my way back.
Yeah.
So right now I'm the COO of Pineda Company. So we own and operate. It's really 3 core businesses, and then we do have our apartment syndication. So that breaks down to Home Run Offer, which is our real estate operation. Do multiple 7 figures every year, predominantly flipping and wholesaling here in Las Vegas, but we do go nationwide as well. We've done a lot of that this year. Then we have Wealthy University, Wealthy Education. That's just basically all of our coaching. So we teach people how to invest in real estate. Over the years, we throw these things called WealthCon every quarter. People are coming out, checking everything out. And then our coaching programs range from like $97 a month all the way up to like $25,000 for the year. All predominantly around like real estate education, how to flip houses. Then we have our lead generation company called Lead Kitchen. So we and your client, but we started off selling leads for real estate investors. So people who want to get leads to flip houses, et cetera. It just made sense for us to kind of like vertically integrate all that stuff. And then now you come on board on the land side, which has been fun, a fun new venture for us. And then we have Pineda Capital, which is our syndication. So we have about 550 units all across the U.S. And then along in the Wealthy University umbrella, we have all of our softwares. So that we either have created ourselves or we white label. So we have like a CRM that we sell, deal finding softwares, all this other stuff. So really like the main goal going into 2025 and like just in general is how do we vertically integrate on the education side? The real estate stuff runs on autopilot, and we'll talk about kind of how, I guess, a little bit later in this thing. We have really great people over there. So that business just runs. And now really what we're trying to do on the education side is be your one-stop shop for everything. So, hey, you want to come and invest in real estate, we're going to give you the tools, the systems, the contracts, the SOPs, along with the coaching to make sure you're successful. So that's kind of where we're at today.
Yeah.
Then to backtrack, prior to that, I worked for the second fastest growing company to go from 0 to $100 million in recurring revenue. The only faster company was Slack. So that company was called Hopin. They were actually very impressive. So they had 900 employees, all remote. So what they sold was virtual event software. Without getting too deep into the specifics, I joined in 2019. I was there for a little over a year. And from 2019 to 2020, COVID happened. So virtual event software got really big. So all the big tech companies, Google, Amazon, Facebook, or Meta, they all used us as a client. And then, virtual events got really big. And then prior to that, I was just in the tech and software space for like 8 years. That was really where like I just kind of cut my teeth in learning how to sell, and then also like seeing what good organizations look like, what I liked, what I didn't like. So coming in here, I was able to kind of like take all that experience, then come work with Ryan. Then way back in the day, I got my real start in sales doing car sales. So I sold cars for Toyota for a little over a year. That was super fun. That was like my first belief in sales. I was like, okay, like, and it wasn't a lot. I was maybe like 18, 19. And I like sold, like my commission was like $800. So like, back then I was rich. So that's kind of where I got the sales bug. And then I kind of just worked my way up from there. And yeah, that's kind of the breakdown.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it's, you look back at some of your first jobs that you have, and it's fun to see the progression, how you've got here. And how did that transition happen where you're at an organization that seems like it's growing, it's exploding, it's a perfect, well, it sounds bad because of COVID, but it's a perfect time in the market to be in the virtual event space. How did you get this job?
I just applied, honestly. So like I had a good background of...
Was it the COO position you applied for?
Oh, you're talking about with Ryan?
Yeah, with Ryan.
Yeah, got you. So switching from Hopin over here. I over time had a little bit of money in my pocket, and that's relative. But I wanted to figure out what to do with it. So I was like, all right, well, like how do I invest in real estate? And I find Ryan on social media. So I followed him, spent $20,000 on his coaching group. So I was a student. So I then, while I'm still working full time, I start wholesaling and flipping part time. So in San Diego, so I was wholesaling houses, the majority of them. Did pretty well for like part time. Made I think it's like 160 grand over the course of like a year.
That's
great. Solid.
Yeah.
Like I'm very happy.
As a side hustle,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jim Rohn says make more money at your part time job than your full time job. I got close. But so while I'm doing that, Ryan and I built a personal relationship. So when I joined, there was maybe like 30 people in our coaching program. So at that time, you'd get Ryan's phone number.
Yeah.
I would just be asking him questions directly, that kind of stuff. Obviously now, we have like 2,000 people that are active, right? So it's not the same. But so him and I built a personal relationship. He knew what I was doing and operating at a high level. He comes out to San Diego in 2022 for like a speaking gig. And what he does, and we were just on a golf trip together. But anytime that he travels, he likes to go play golf. So he hit me up. He's like, "Hey, you want to go play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." And I was just starting to golf at the time. But what I didn't know was that I'd also be kind of like his glorified Uber driver.
There you go.
So I'm kind of chauffeuring him around. But we're on the golf course, and I'm just kind of talking about what I'm doing. I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm kind of at a crossroads here. Like, what do I do? Do I go all in on real estate investing? I'm not super passionate about it, but it's making okay money. I could maybe build a real estate business." Or I could go in this tech route, maybe in 3-4 years, be a VP of sales, something along those lines. But, that's kind of more so what I'm passionate about. I like the business aspect, like starting companies, growing them. And he was, at the time, building the parent company. So to get into kind of like our breakdown, we have like Pineda Company at the top level that owns all of our subsidiary companies. So he was building the parent company out, and he needed a sales manager. So I came on actually as a sales manager. For all the businesses. So I was responsible for all the different sales teams, make sure they all kind of handle everything. And then, so that was like a handshake deal on the golf course on a Friday. Sunday, he sends me a text message offer. Monday, I quit my job. Wednesday, I'm working for Ryan. So yeah, it was quick, but I think the opportunity, it made sense. I'm very happy, a few years later. And then, so started off as sales manager, but what we found was we shouldn't have a ton of processes. And so my role turned into a lot of like COO type duties. And then we're doing one of our quarterly planning sessions. And then our business coach, his name's Gary Harper, he was just like, well, you kind of need like a true COO. At the time, Noelle, Ryan's sister, who's now our CFO, was technically the COO, right? But she was more so basically doing finance stuff, and that's what we found. Mm-hmm. So then at that point, I moved into the COO seat, and that was almost 2 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of the breakdown there.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is, you answered the question I was going to ask before I got to ask it, which is, Ryan's got a big following. This is a very coveted role. Of course, you didn't start as COO, but even a sales position at any of his companies is going to be sought after. And so I think it's important because I'm sure many of our listeners would be thrilled to jump at an opportunity like that. And you put yourself in the position by signing up for the mastermind, right? Getting to know him, starting a real estate business. You put yourself in the position to get lucky, right, when that opportunity presented itself. And so really, It's not luck at all. So I think that's an important point to highlight.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest things that I think just people in general, I think this is just opportunity, right? It's like get really good at communication. So if you can effectively communicate your value and obviously grow your skills, like I fit the mold really well because I was already investing in real estate, so I understood what a real estate business looks like. I had the sales background and coming from like a tech background type company, and I had the desire to grow, so I could communicate my value. I had the value as well, and then I was in the right spot, so I was in the right room. If you do those three things, you're going to be successful no matter what type of thing you do. If you're selling land and you're in the right room and you can provide value, you're going to get the deal. So I think that's just important for any type of business, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, you came into the business in 2022, and that was not a fun time when interest rates were starting to skyrocket. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you guys navigate really the last 2 years in home run offer with interest rates?
It was tough, transparently. So 2022 was okay. We started seeing the effects of it, like Q3, Q4, and then 2023 was really where we had to like really bunker down. And luckily, we had cash reserves and stuff like that. And then we pivoted our model to going predominantly wholesale and novation heavy, right? So that's how we pivoted as just having multiple exit strategies. But I mean, we lost millions of dollars. But because we had the cash reserves and we had the deal flow, I think that's the most important thing. If we were able to continue to get deals and we would just wholesale them as opposed to flipping them ourselves. And I know you guys are going to do a podcast with Ryan after this. He'll talk about it, but we, I think it was like $20 to $30 million worth of debt was out at the time.
Oof.
Yeah. And number one, all the investors, they always get paid back, even on our losers. I think it's something that Ryan's really proud of. That's something that I'm really proud of. But yeah, how do we navigate it with interest rates? Number one, just having cash reserves. And number two was just having effective deal flow. We did have to make some adjustments in the company. That's actually how Monty ended up as the COO, where we had somebody in place who wasn't watching things as closely as they should have. And that's the challenge that sometimes you're going to run into, especially as you guys continue to grow your brand and are really, really smart. The person that you hire to like run things sometimes gets dependent on you guys to make the decision, right? And that's something that I have to check myself with is I can't wait for Ryan to make a decision for me. Like I need to be the one to be proactive. If I see something that looks off or that I need to, fix, either I'm going to fix it or I'm going to like be proactive and talk to him about it before the end of the quarter. And then all of a sudden we're like, where'd the money go? Right. So that was another thing that we had to make an adjustment for. There's different types of leaders and I guess different types of operators is a better question, right? You have people who are great at just managing and maintaining. And then you need to have kind of your battle captain type thing, right? When things are bad, you need someone who's going to be a lot more strategic. And that's kind of what we ended up having to do and just make adjustments there. But yeah, long-winded answer, but really it was cash reserves, getting the right people in the right seats, people who really wanted to be there, and then shifting our strategy to now changing in terms of like we have way less debt than we had way back then.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I think one thing I want to get into is you came in, you started working on SOPs, you started building the true operations and systems within the business. How did you navigate the people component of that whenever things kind of hit the fan a little bit with having a significant amount of debt? The market's not as good as it could have been if you had started here 2 years before that.
For sure, yeah.
Like that. How did you guys scale back on the people side? Did you have to do a lot of firing or layoffs or anything like that?
So in 2023, so I'll talk about on the education side, we were scaling like that. Like the thing with education versus on the real estate market, like it's always going to be trailing maybe 16 months or so, right? So when things get bad in real estate, people are still interested in investing. People are still wanting to do stuff. So 2023 was actually a really good year for us on the education side. And it was still a pretty solid year for us I apologize. 2022 was a really, really good year. And 2023 was also pretty solid on the education side. We saw the effects of the market in 2023 for our real estate business. So to answer your question, we were scaling. We had about 100 employees at the beginning of the year. Now we have across all our businesses, about 38, 39.
Wow. And when you say the beginning of the year, this year,
2024.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had a lot of employees. And the majority of them were on the education side. We had a lot of coaches who were like helping teach people. Had some middle management that we didn't necessarily need, and that kind of stuff, which was fine when we were when everyone's making money, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of waste that can happen, but we had to get really lean. On the real estate side, we've always been pretty lean. We've always had 3 to 5 acquisitions people, and 1 to 2 people on the disposition side, meaning the people who sell the deals, a COO and a transaction coordinator, and that's really been the business for the last 3 to 4 years. So staff-wise, we didn't get too fat. It was more so on the debt and the strategy that we were using in terms of like flipping. Just swapping that helped us reduce count.
Yeah. So a couple things I want to highlight. You mentioned deal flow kind of saved you, right? You kept doing deals. So many people, when things go wrong, they stop.
Yeah.
They stop spending money on marketing, the lifeblood of the business, and then they stop making money, and so those problem deals sink them. And so I just think that's important to highlight.
For sure.
Kept making money.
Yeah, well, that, and I don't know about the land guys, but the real estate investors are notoriously cash poor.
Yeah.
Right? They're always invested in the next deal.
Yeah.
They're rich in cash flow.
Exactly. And so they're terrible at cash flow management.
Yes.
Right? We're rich. We invest. We go out and we go get more deals. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, we got all these deals, and where's the money at? I can't go to McDonald's. My card's going to decline.
Yeah.
And so one thing that we've always done really well is we've always kept and maintained a consistent pipeline of deal flow because we understand that's the lifeblood of the business.
Yep.
And when you're in, and again, we had these deals closing, so it wasn't necessarily like a whole $20 million hole. But when you're in the hole of that much money, you're not going to save your way out of a $20 million deficit, right? No. You're only going to do that by having more deal flow and earning your way out.
Yeah.
So obviously, even on a smaller scale, right? Like let's say one deal goes bad, deal flow solves every problem almost every problem in a business.
Yeah.
So we pivoted this year to really just running a lot of our like Facebook ads and stuff like that, which has been very, very successful for us. But even before that, it was just we can't turn off the engine no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing with any business, but especially in real estate.
Yeah. So don't stop marketing ever, I think is the key there that I wanted to drive home, and you guys
100%. Yeah. That's the only way to stay in business.
All right. So along with the cash reserves and all the tactical steps, what did you do to keep the employee sentiment positive, to keep the culture positive when things are going wrong, the market's changing, there's a lot of negative news?
Yeah, I mean, I know our acquisitions people, they definitely went through it a little bit. But the good thing with them specifically, they made a lot of money with us. So they knew what it was like when things were really, really good. So they were willing to stick it out while things weren't as great. Also, just having to set like little bonuses and stuff like that we could cash out, or like get them included on. But even still, like somebody who was making $200,000 a year with us on acquisitions is now making maybe like 80 to 100. So it's not as good as they'd like, but the other part of it too is this isn't just an us problem. Everywhere else went out of business. So there's really nowhere else transparently, there's nowhere else where they can really go. All of our competitors, not all of them, but the vast majority of our competitors went out of business. And no one was spending money on marketing, to your point. So if they wanted to go somewhere else, they're not even going to get any leads, like, period. We were like, before we ran our Facebook ads, we were running TV commercials. So that was our main bread and butter for the last 4 years or so before we switched to the Facebook ad model. We did reduce our budget, but we were still marketing. Everybody else wasn't. So in terms of how did we maintain morale on that side, I mean, just the fact that we were still in business and helping them out, I think was huge. And the big thing with anytime you're navigating a tough situation, just over communicate. Like, hey guys, this is where the business is at, and this is where it's going to be really tough for the next, 6 to 8 months. So it is what it is. I'm telling you now, if you want to take the ride with us, take the ride. But if not, I totally understand. And most people stuck around. Most people wanted to stay, and because again, in this industry, it was tough everywhere. So I think that in terms of just navigating a tough time, I think transparency, getting them to buy in, and then just making sure that you are able to still give them enough tools and resources to go get their job done by marketing and just staying in business.
I mean, that right there is A+ leadership, evidence-based leadership, of being able to have humility whenever you're in a leadership position of look, guys, this is what we're dealing with. I'm not having fun right now either. This is stressful for all of us, and we can either come together and navigate this, or you can leave, and that's okay. And you're going to be faced with the same problems or no problems at all because you're not going to have a job somewhere else. And one thing I do want to hit on is beyond just marketing within the wholesaling or the house flipping business, having these other channels within the ecosystem of Pineda Company, of the education business, where we've spent a little bit of time talking about how, okay, the wholesaling, the house flipping was really hard. You had a lot of debt out, but the education was increasing. And I think something you and Ryan both do a good job with is both internally, it sounds like, and externally, is talking about the bad times. So within that, how did you guys kind of strategically pivot within the education space to say, hey, we want you guys to learn how to invest in real estate effectively. We also want to teach you what not to do so you don't, potentially get yourself in a hole like we've gotten ourselves into a little bit. So what are some of the strategies you've implemented in education recently to help your students avoid some of those challenges?
One of the biggest advantages of working with us in the education space versus somebody else is we're still doing it. A lot of educators, for whatever reason, stop doing the thing that they're coaching on. Yeah. Right. Hey, I had success in 2020. I'll coach you. And the biggest piece of credibility for us has been the fact that we're still actively investing in real estate. Absolutely. So, for example, the Facebook ad, we started this Lead Kitchen because it was a successful thing for us internally. We decided to run Facebook ads for ourselves before we did it for anybody else. Right. And then that turned into a business. Novations, which has been a newer strategy for us. It started for us, and then we rolled it out to our students, right? So the way that we're able to continue to maintain, a good product is just the fact that everything that we teach, we've done and we tested and we've proven for the last, 3-4 months before we give it to our students. So I think that's how we differentiate ourselves in the industry, is just the fact that, we're doing it. And if you want to do it like us, then, we'll teach you how. And I think that's always been Ryan's main strategy. Very early on, when he first started marketing, it's almost the same as it is now, where say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how much money I've made. This is how much money I've lost. Yeah. Learn. and it's super, super black and white, super transparent. And that's part of the reason why I think I was attracted to working here, and even buying the coaching in the first place, was because I could feel the transparency in the pitch, essentially. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's so important to note, because there's so many people. It's so easy to put content out there and create an education program, and it's alluring. Yeah. Where you don't really have to spend too much money to make a bunch of money on a coaching program a lot of the time. And being able to have that transparency, and it just increases legitimacy, because if you haven't lost money in business, you're not really doing business. But one thing for, specifically for you, Javi, you've got all these companies, and you guys had a lot more companies whenever you came on board, and you've kind of narrowed the scope a little bit. How do you determine how much time to devote to each one of these companies, especially if you're like, fires need to be fought over here, but this business is doing really well, so I want to, capitalize on that? How do you kind of devote your time?
Every day, and just in general, right? Time, money, resources, right? How much time, money, and resources am I gonna dedicate to a particular business or a particular problem? So every quarter, we're like, all right, what are our goals for the quarter, and what are we going to dedicate to that? And so resources, people, people, softwares, all that kind of stuff too, right? And also, what's the upside? So there have been fires that we had, or businesses that we had that we might not, that, yes, you're correct, aren't, and we don't have them anymore because it wasn't worth our time. The upside wasn't there, and we didn't want to dedicate the people or the resources to fix the problem. So we're like, all right, you know what? We don't see a reason to continue this when there's way more upside over here, right? So it's always just it's understanding we all have finite resources and what's going to be what's going to have the most upside. And so for us, it's like, okay, well, we there was never a question that we weren't going to continue with Home Run Offer. Number one, we still had deal flow. We were still making money, even though we were losing. And the credibility piece. And the same thing, the education, right? Well, because we did have a social media coaching program. We had a general business coaching program. And those things like made a little bit of money, but we never really put a ton of resources behind them. And we're like, all right, let's just refocus and do what we do really, really well, which is real estate education. So we just realized that a lot of the things that we had were distractions and the upside wasn't there versus, something else. And the reason, and we really didn't even want to start Lead Kitchen, but the upside is just tremendous. And the amount of overhead that's required for the amount of upside is just, it would be silly for us not to. And that's the type of business or the type of venture that you'd want to get into. I think when the lens that we look at is this silly to not do? Like, is this like, it has to be such a good, and the way we look at our business opportunities now, it has to be so good and so much better than what we're already doing that we're willing to take the risk on it. Otherwise, like, no, let's just stay in our lane. But last thing that I'll say about like managing time, I think it comes back to like, again, what is it really worth fixing? And there will always be problems in a business. And I think what a lot of entrepreneurs run into is, which problem do I fix? And the lens that I look at is what generates the most revenue for the business. If it doesn't generate revenue, do I need to fix it today? Like, there are a lot of problems. Like, I could probably list off 100 problems in all of our businesses right now, but most of them aren't problems worth solving at this moment. I'm going to spend my brain power on how to generate more revenue or how to like make something more efficient that is going to help my team generate more revenue.
Yeah.
So that's it. Just income producing activities.
Yeah, man, there will always be problems if that's not the moral of owning a business. That's why, to Mason's point earlier, if you've never lost money, you're either illegitimate or haven't been in business very long.
Yeah.
And it's just a constant fire. There's constant fires all the time, and that is the reality of business. I wish more people said that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you're transparent there. So to that end, all right, I'm kind of sitting here wondering, you're talking about leverage and where's kind of the level 10 opportunity, as Hormozi always says. You think there's a chance that Lead Kitchen ends up taking all the time? Because I think listening to Ryan, that's probably the most scalable of all the businesses. Where do you think you'll be in 2, 3, 4 years?
Oh, man. I hope I'm on a beach sipping a Mai Tai in 3, 4 years.
You'll get bored.
Yeah. No, really, yeah. Not if I own the beach.
That's true.
No, seriously, I don't know, but the goal is eventually to build a business that's sellable. And that's everything that we're trying to do right now. I think the addition of Lead Kitchen to everything that we do is very attractive. I think education, like really the way we're looking at it right now, we're not even trying to be just a true coaching company anymore. I think with the addition of all the resources that we're giving them, hey, you're going to get the leads to call. You're going to get the CRM to house the leads and call the leads through. We're going to give you the deal finding software to run comps, run the property. Like, we're going to give you an entire business. And now we're going to tell you how to use it and how to actually grow your business. So if we become more of a service-based company that's on reoccurring subscriptions, I think that's what really turns the industry on its head a little bit, as opposed to, hey, pay me 10 grand and I'm going to teach you how to do something. It's like, number one, we're not even going to charge you 10 grand. We're going to do a monthly subscription every month that you can cancel out of any time, which no one is doing. If we can do all that and give you all the tools and the resources, it's way more sticky because there will always be people that fall off and don't do anything with it. That's fine. But if you actually take action, you're going to be so ingrained and tied into everything that we have that it's going to be tough to leave. And so it's, I mean, really, it is a little bit of when I'm looking at similarities, kind of the gym launch model, where they're like, hey, we're going to help you with all these things. Basically, the only thing that they didn't do was like franchise it, and that's where we're like, I don't think we'll ever franchise, but we're going to do everything else for you.
I like that. Mason and I have talked about this quite a bit, where a lot of the land coaching, it's just a big fee up front, and how do you create some sort of model where it's far less up front, but you give them everything and create a long-term customer in a variety of ways.
The challenge with education has always been Once you sell them the thing, they learned the thing, how are they going to continue to stay with you? And the way we figure that out is just through subscription revenue and through services. If you can add that to whatever coaching offer that you have, and you don't have to build your own, you can always just white label, affiliate, but just have something where you're making reoccurring revenue, because otherwise it's like a land deal. Once you close the deal, it's done. You got to go find the next one. The same thing with education. Once you close a student in the old school way, it's done, and you got to go find another student. So it's just this beast. It's a great cash machine, but if you don't feed it, you're out of business. So with us, we're just building subscription revenue, and that's what makes it sellable. If we ever do decide to sell.
So something that I think is interesting about how you guys operate, and you hit on it a little bit, but I want to dive in more, is you guys were at the beginning of the year, going into the end of last year, a lot more fat as an organization. You had a lot of middle managers and everything. And something that we spoke about briefly when we were golfing, as well as Ryan talked about, was all of your people in your organization are selling, including your COOs. They're still involved in the process. So with that being said, you have leaders that are still in the day-to-day of like actually transacting. How do you feel like you guys are adapting either quickly because your leaders are involved, or do you try and stay the course on these quarterly, strategic ventures and everything?
It's a balance between like pivoting too much and not pivoting enough, right? I definitely think we err on the side of pivoting too much, but I'd rather be there.
That's an entrepreneurial paradox right there.
Yeah, right.
ADHD people.
Comes back to, again, time, money, resources. How much time, money, and resources are we going to dedicate to this test? So, for example, we have our $97 a month community. We, 2 weeks ago, decided to run a test. We're like, what happens if we double the price? Will they come in at $197 the same way that they came in at $97? So, all right, test. We're going to dedicate 10% of our traffic to that. We are going to run it for 2 weeks, and we're going to spend, I forget how much we spent. Like, we'll spend a few $1,000s just to test it, right? Time, money, resources. And then that way we can still test, pivot, and iterate without having to mess up the whole engine. One of the things that we used to do, which is so idiotic, but we would run a test and we would change everything to match the test. And then the team has to change, I don't know, create a new pitch or whatever it is. And then we would have to pivot back and all this dumb stuff, right? So we've gotten better about iterating, as we've done it more. So there's that. Also getting team buy-in, letting them know that this is going to be a test, so that way they feel included. One of the big issues that I would run into early on was I would give the team breadcrumbs. So I wouldn't give them all the information that I knew, because I was like, okay, I don't want to confuse them. I'm just gonna be like, hey, we're gonna try this and we're gonna go do it. But now, I'd let them know, hey, this is what we're testing, this is what we're gonna do, and the team responds way better to that because they feel involved and they feel included in, the thing. And then back to everybody selling and me being involved. Yeah, I think it helps out a lot. And I'm not in lead rotation, right? I'll hop in, I'll take calls, or I'll talk to you or somebody, and we'll sell some higher level stuff. But I'm still listening to calls. The team's only 1 or 2 degrees away from Ryan, if you're really at every level, whether it be at a home run offer or us, so it's very easy for us to get feedback and then implement that feedback very, very quickly. But it's just setting the parameters around the test before we pivot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a balance of, you want and need to split tests just to make sure that you're not missing out on other opportunities, but it's also really easy to start chasing that shiny object, and instead of dedicating 10% of your time, money, or resources to it, you dedicate 90% exactly, and you're like, where'd my business go?
Yeah.
And
one thing on that, Ed, is one thing that we do really well is anytime, for example, Lead Kitchen or this new thing that we're doing with the lead packs, right? We will sell it with a MVP, or minimum viable product, first. Before we put all the money behind it, before we put all these resources behind it, we'll beta test it with our students, or we'll just soft launch it, basically. Just test the market, right? I think what a lot of entrepreneurs do, which is just a mistake, they spend all this time building a brand, getting the LLC, getting like building a website, and then like whatever, right?
And they don't have a deal yet.
Yeah. Just sell and see the feedback from the market, and then you can worry about building the frameworks around it. And so that's something that I think we do really well. Is we'll test, and we still have a good product. Don't get me wrong. But there's transparency there too. Hey guys, this is a beta test. Like, if you want to be part of it, let us know, and we're going to give you a discount on it because it's going to be way more expensive once we actually work out all the kinks. And so I think just getting the market to give you feedback is extremely important when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, or at any point as an entrepreneur.
Oh yeah, and two things on that where. Great book called The Lean Startup that talks about the minimum viable product and how necessary it is to build it out, because so many people, especially in the real estate education space, we're talking about for an exempt trust to be able to hold their rental properties, and they've never made a cold call yet. It's like, go get the rental property, and then you can figure that stuff out when you build $1 billion brand. That's what happens. And on the leadership point, I think a lot of times whenever we're attempting to operate extraordinarily efficiently and in a lean way, we're like, okay, I don't want to tell all of my employees this. I just want them to know this is how much you need to know. Just go do it. And you think that that's going to save you time, and it doesn't, because then they're confused and they don't go in the direction that you need them to do, and they don't have the empowerment or adaptability to know that, hey, this is what Javi told me we're trying. This is why we're trying it. This is what our end result we're expecting is. And then they can navigate it a little more appropriately instead of knocking on your door all the time saying, hey, why are we doing this?
Exactly. And it's just lazy leadership, honestly. And like, I'll take ownership over it because that's how it was. I just didn't feel like explaining everything every time. I'm like, dude, just do it, please. But when you take the time to just truly be transparent with them, and it can come in the form of like a weekly meeting. It can come in the form of like you just every time you have an idea, like we brainstorm or whatever. But as long as you're just taking the time to like let them feel heard as well, I think that's extremely important. I think a lot of leaders, especially just like early on, you're typically the smartest person in the room, just because it just is what it is, and you don't feel like you want to like pour into these people, but like the more you pour into them, that just the better the situation is going to be for the entire business.
Oh yeah.
So to that end, I want to ask about you and what Ryan has set up and how he's made the umbrella big enough for you to be comfortable staying here and working for him. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what makes you want to stay here?
In order to attract high-level people, your vision has to help. Like the vision that you create, the people that work for you have to see their dreams or their goals being achieved within your vision. That's just to put it very simply. But in terms of like how Ryan keeps me, I get a percentage of revenue from the businesses. And I think that's how you have to incentivize your higher level people to like have his interest and my interest are aligned. He makes more money, I make more money. Simple. And especially because I come from the sales background, like I'm used to that too. So I think just in terms of attracting higher level people, that's part of the reason why like these startups do stock options, right? Because everything's aligned. If we sell, you get paid, everybody gets paid, everybody's happy. And so that's how I am incentivized. Also, the ability to like do a lot of the cool stuff that I'm doing here, I wouldn't be able to do on my own. I bet like your favorite influencer I've probably met, I've probably like seen him on a podcast with Ryan. I've been able to pick their brains. We had Russell Brunson here for like 8 hours just training the team. Like I wouldn't get that knowledge anywhere else. So 2 things. One, financially, I'm still incentivized by like if the payday that comes down the road, along with just the monthly revenue, like I'm making enough for me to feel good. And then 3, I've told Ryan this too, like if it ever went south for whatever reason, or our time just is up and it is what it is, all the knowledge that I've learned here is just going to set me up to be a way better entrepreneur whenever I do decide to go take that down the road. I don't think I'll be here forever, and I don't think Ryan wants me here forever. But yeah, so that's kind of how you continue to incentivize people.
Okay, so to that end, kind of going down the ladder, does everyone at any of Pineda's companies have some sort of upside? Are you the type that even the clerical employees have some sort, or how do you incentivize them and hire good transaction coordinators?
So
say?
they get paid so I'll talk about the real estate business and how they get paid. So our acquisitions people, so the people who are closing the deals, they make 10% of whatever they close. So they're salespeople, they're incentivized that way. Our dispositions people, the people who sell the deals, so once we get a wholesale deal, acquisitions closes it, disposition sells it. They make 5% of the deal. Same thing. So they are also incentivized to close deals and it's commission only. Also helps you run really lean. You don't have any salaries that you're paying out unless deals get closed. Our transaction coordinator, they do make a salary, but they also get paid per transaction. So I think they get like $100 a deal. And then who am I missing? Our project managers, when we are flipping, and we still do flip, by the way. We just don't have so much debt out at one time. It has to really make sense for us to take, like, I think we bought 2 properties last month out of like the 20 deals that we did. So we still do buy. So I want to make that clear. But our project managers, they used to make a salary back when we had like 40, 50 flips going on at a time. It made sense like to have a base. But now we pay them per project. So they make like $1,500 per project when the deal closes, which is also very important. So that's how we stay lean. Some of them do get upside. Somebody like Monty, he gets a percentage of net revenue as well. So all of our like true leaders in the business that are like responsible for the company, they do get paid on upside or I guess like the revenue of the business because that's what they're responsible for. Some of our marketing people, they're just salaried. And I think those types of people typically prefer that. Maybe we'll give them like an annual raise or a quarterly raise or a bonus at some point. But for the most part, those people are all just flat salaries.
That makes sense. And we've spent a decent amount of time talking about the incentives and financial incentives, as well as just believing in the mission and vision of the organization and being a part of something cool. I mean, it's such a cool setup that you guys have
for
here.
Sure. That's fun.
You can see how people want to come into the office and work here. What about the accountability component of it for your acquisitions or your sales or your dispo people? What KPIs are you and the other leaders in the organization holding them to? How do you make decisions on hiring and firing them? And what do you see as a differentiator between the successful ones and the ones that you kick out the door quick?
Okay. I want to answer all these because these are all really good. Just KPI in general, we've gone back and forth between like, hey, you have to have a minimum activity metric. Hey, you have a deal metric, all this stuff, right, for acquisitions and dispo. I'll break it down just kind of like the way I view our hierarchy. And this kind of comes just because I was a salesperson too. Number one, if you're getting your contracts or you're getting your deals closed, I will never talk to you about your metrics and how much time you're spending on the phone, right? But if you don't have X amount of deals, so I think right now like their KPI is 2 contracts a week per person, right? If you don't hit that, then I'm going to look at your numbers. And if your numbers aren't there, then we're going to have a problem, right? We don't have a strict like write-up type thing where like, hey, you get written up 3 times, you're out. But we are very transparent with our people. Like, hey, and also, especially with like real estate, the acquisitions and the dispo side, it's very transparent. Are you closing deals or are you not closing deals? So sales is always easy for accountability. Going into, a TC or like even our marketing people, that's a little bit more nuanced where it's like, are the projects getting done on time? Are the landing pages getting completed? Those types of things. So, from a KPI perspective, what I believe is each person should only be responsible for about 3 numbers or 3 metrics. Anything more than 3, they don't know how to win. So, for our some of our marketing people, it's like, hey, what's our subscription growth? What's our churn? And what's our revenue? Right? That's it. And then for somebody like our acquisitions people, it's just contracts. Figure out how to get contracts. But if you're not, like, these are the metrics that you should be hitting. 100 dials a day, 2 hours on the phone. It's nothing crazy. So there's that. In terms of hiring, firing, and all that type of stuff, one of the things that I would run into very early on in my career was like, did I do everything I could to make sure that this person was successful? And now that I have to fire them, is it my fault or is it their fault? And in order to mitigate that, I was like, all right, I'm going to be so upfront and so transparent with everything that I expect. I'm going to put it all in writing. So that way in a month, 2 months, whenever, I can fire them with a little bit more of a clear conscience, right? Because the hard part is, regardless of whether or not you did the right thing, let's say you didn't onboard them the way you should have, or you didn't train them and now 3 months down the road they're not performing. You still have to let that person go, even though you messed up, because they're just done for the business, right? So either way, the result's the same, but as long as I can make sure that I did everything I could. So what that looks like is we have a pretty, not in depth, but a pretty straightforward handbook of like, hey, these are your KPIs. These are your scripts. These are the SOPs that we have in place for you. Everything is right here for you. So you have it. Everybody knows it's clear. Also, one of the things that's a big theme for us is just with Ryan's sports background. We're not a team. We're not a family. We're a team. Mm-hmm. And teams, they have camaraderie. They do care about each other. But if you're not making the plays or if you're not performing, there is somebody who wants to take your spot. So if we communicate that from the jump, people want to work here because they want to perform. And so every person that gets a job wants to do a good job when they first get hired. I don't think there's ever been a job that I was not excited for when I first started. Then after a few months, I'm like, actually it wasn't what I thought or whatever, right? But everybody starts with good intentions. So if you can just like milk that with having clear expectations on both sides, I think it's a lot easier to deal with the tough conversations that come later.
Oh, yeah.
Because you were transparent from the beginning.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Do you like winning more than you hate losing?
It's a good, I think I no, I just hate losing. Mm-hmm. But I hate losing.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like that's similar for a lot of people with our personality types.
Yeah.
You can have
a good question.
500 deals that go right, and it's that one or two that went wrong that you're so angry about and so frustrated about. And it's challenging, too, for people that are interested in being in a leadership position that we hold ourselves extremely accountable. And you're like, I did everything right, but it's still my fault. Mm-hmm. And it's hard not to beat yourself up sometimes, whether it's a deal or a deal failure or a management failure.
But I think there's comfort in that, too, where if everything is my fault, it's all good. Like I can fix it on the next one, or at least I learned or whatever. So yeah, I think there is definitely some anxiety around everything being your fault. But for me, it's comforting too, because like there's no one else to blame. I don't need to. I can't. I mean, I guess I could try to blame Ryan, but at the end of the day, like it is my fault that the thing didn't go the way it was supposed to, and there's comfort in that for sure.
It's empowering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
because you can turn it around or fix it on the next one and all that good stuff. So I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you say, a lot of the people listening, us included, aren't quite to the point where we can hire a whole C-suite team.
Yep.
Maybe just have a couple acquisition managers, a transaction coordinator, doing a lot of management they don't necessarily like, a lot of tasks they don't love. Any advice for people in that position and how to work towards offloading the roles they don't want, but dealing with it in the meantime?
Yeah. Well, number one, I think talent is very cheap these days. Between AI can do a lot of stuff for you. Virtual assistants doesn't have to be from the Philippines. There's some very talented people out there from Egypt, India, South America, that can really offload a lot of that stuff without the cost that you might think a traditional person would charge you. So I think that's number one. Is like just don't think you aren't ready. As long as you're making, you have some deal flow coming in or whatever your business is. If you're making a little bit of cash, I would look into it. Yeah. Then the next thing is like, how do you pick what to do, right? It just comes back to, again, time, money, resources, and what are you the best at in your business? Well, most entrepreneurs think, and I think this comes from like the personal development space, I need to improve my weaknesses. Like I need to get better at Excel, or I need to figure out, I need to take a bookkeeping course. Just outsource it. Yeah. Like figure out, number one, what you're really good at, but more importantly, what generates the most revenue for the business that you're good at, right? Those are the two things that you should focus on. Everything else I'm going to outsource. And I'll use Ryan for an example. When he first started his real estate business, first it was only him. Then eventually he got his listing agent to also be his project manager. So he offloaded that piece first. So now he could focus on doing more deals. Then he goes out and he gets cold callers. Some of our cold callers are still up there that turn into like actual acquisitions people. He gets cold callers. So now he can just go on appointments. The highest and best use of his time at that moment was going on appointments to close deals. And he was the best at it, right? If somebody listening is like more of an administrative or like a true operational type, that's fine because that's what you're the best at and that's like going to generate revenue for the business. So what I would do is I would go hire an acquisitions person immediately that's going to go generate revenue and that's actually going to like help out the company. Mm-hmm. So I think number one, it starts with self-awareness, understanding what your unique talent is to the business. And then number two, don't be afraid to like spend a little bit of money because the way we look at it, number one, when it comes to salaries is you're not actually paying for their person for the year. So let's say it's $100,000 a year position, right? What a general rule of thumb is you're probably only be paying them for a quarter if they're going to work out. So it's really a $25,000 commitment, if that, because we'll fire people after 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
If we really don't see any promise, obviously, right? So you're not committing to $100,000 a year, which if they made it a year with you, they better have at least 3 to 5x whatever you're paying them.
Yeah.
Whether that be in gained productivity from you or they're generating actual revenue, right? So that's the lens you got to look at it through.
Yeah, man, I wish I could have heard that whole piece like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You're always going to be uncomfortable hiring your first couple people. Well, every subsequent bigger hire, you're going to feel like you're not ready. Don't work on your weak points, like your point about leverage, right? Working on what you're really good at to get to the point where you're better than almost everyone at, can be far more productive. And you also really drove home the point that you can hire commission-only people, which is, I think, another limiting belief that a lot of people have. So, yeah, a lot of excellent points.
Yeah,
there.
and in the beginning, you're probably going to have to pay a higher commission.
Yeah.
We're able to pay 10% because we have inbound leads coming in every single day and that they're going to be able to hit and close. If we didn't have that, we'd probably have to pay 20, 30% on the front end to make sure that they're made whole.
Yeah.
So it just kind of depends on where you're at. And the way I look at salaries and stuff is like, okay, what is this job worth? And then how can I like reverse engineer their base pay, right? So for example, with acquisitions, let's say your average deal size is $15,000, you're only closing one a month. So in the beginning, you're gonna have to give them a pretty good chunk of that, maybe like 30-40%, in order for it to make sense for them. And then as you grow and as you scale, you're just gonna scale back their commission. And as long as you're transparent with them in the beginning, saying, hey, like I'm gonna pay you a lot in the beginning, percentage wise, but as we grow, this will probably decrease.
Yeah. I think a few points is the self-awareness is so crucial because if you are that operations type, administrative type, you can find the more sales personality to partner up with and run a really effective organization because you have to determine, okay, what am I doing that is an income generating activity? And if I'm trying to do something that's just not generating income, it's just not right for you. And I think being able to go out and partner up and match make makes that so much easier. Specifically, we talked about AI just a little bit. What tools are you guys implementing in your business to make it a more effective and efficient operation? Because going from 100 plus people to 38 people, I imagine while you're like, oh, wow, they weren't doing as much as it felt like they were doing, but there's going to be stuff that you can potentially use technology to fix those problems.
Number one, there's just so much waste in a business. I mean, even now at 38 people, we're about as lean as we can get, and I know there's still waste in the business. I mean, I see, I'll call like our copywriter. She's chatting for like half the day, but granted, she's doing everything that I expect her to do. She's hitting all of her minimum, like she's writing, she's sending out a lot of emails and all that stuff. But I know that I am not getting 100% of her productivity. And so there's always going to be waste in the business. It's just how much can I mitigate and how much how much of this person's productivity can I really extract out of them? To your question about AI and stuff like that, so we are playing around with AI outbound, like cold callers. Well, not cold call. So big thing here is you can only call inbound leads with AI. So quick story. There was this AI that was fundraising for the Biden campaign. This is back when Joe was still running. They cloned his voice through AI, went outbound, raised, I think it was like $68 million or something crazy. It might have been more. I don't know. But so then the FTC or whatever regulatory agency came in and within 60 days, they passed a bill saying you can't outbound cold calling, and the government moves slow. So so anyway, that's a very quick turnaround time. So if you're going to use AI for like calling, it has to be to your inbound leads. But we're playing around with that, which we're really excited for. It actually goes live like this week, so I'll keep you updated on how it goes.
Is that going to be a service you offer to your clients too?
Potentially, if it works. Right now we're using like I'll shout them out. It's called Sales AI.
Okay.
And so we'll see if it works. And then from that point, then we can figure out if we can either do it ourselves or if like we just end up doing a partnership with them. So starting the education business, we're also going to start it in the real estate business with all the inbound leads that we have. And so we're excited for that. From an SOP like creation standpoint, one of my favorite ones is called Scribe. Scribe.how is amazing. So it's made it so easy for me to like just like give any like if you can't figure out from Scribe, then it's done. But basically, for people who don't know, what it is it's a plugin on Google Chrome where it tracks every button click, and then once you hit save, it creates the entire SOP with screenshots, little GIFs of like the button getting clicked, and all this stuff. So it's incredibly time saving for people who aren't very operationally minded. So we use that. We have all of our project management stuff too. In the CRM. We have like automations for follow-up sequences. We have automations for nurture sequences. So over the course of 12 months, people are getting text messages and stuff like that, tasks, notifications, all kinds of fun little nuggets.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think one thing before we kind of move towards the end of our show that I want to talk a little bit more about is you're building a company to sell. At least with Lead Kitchen. How do you feel like your approach to management within the organization has either changed since making that internal decision, if that's what you guys end up doing, or whenever you had the inception of this business of, at the beginning, did you think, oh, this is going to be something that we can build to sell? And talk about that.
I think in the inception of this business, this is like, okay, this is really the first sellable company that we can work with, right? Because people don't pay a lot for a wholesale business because, again, the same thing like we were talking about, it's not reoccurring revenue. You got to always continue to get more deals. The same thing with education. Typically, it's tough to sell because it's a face and it's not reoccurring revenue. So when we first thought about this business, we're like, all right, this is the first one that's truly sellable. Also, all the data we're collecting is there's some money there for somebody. So there's that. And then how we're building it to sell versus like previous businesses. I mean, it's not a totally different, but it's a little, I'm trying to make it cleaner. Yeah. So it's like, when you live in a house, then once you're ready to sell it, you want to get it all nice and clean and ready, right? So we're just trying to make it clean from the jump. So like trying to document as many SOPs, make it as automated as possible. So that way, whoever looks at it in a year, 2 years, 3 years, they feel like they're like, okay, like these people have it really dialed in. And it's also made us run the business better because if we're building it to sell from the jump, like all the operational stuff that usually we wouldn't put a lot of time into, we're trying to knock out sooner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And one tactical question, the CRM you guys built, is that just for you internally and your students, or is that something you're selling as well?
We sell that. So it's called Wealthy CRM, so wealthycrm.com. It's predominantly made for real estate investors, though. So the automations, the pipelines, all that stuff. And that's another thing that we're going to work on, too, is just adding more features that we can upsell later. So that way they can just like buy the basic and then they can get the plus or the premium.
Sure.
So that's something that we're also working on, too.
Cool. Yeah, I think we both need a better CRM in our business, so I never know.
You can get really, and I'm sure you guys know this, but you can get really far with like a Google spreadsheet and a cell phone. Yeah. Right? It comes back to what we were talking about earlier. People overthink things. Yeah. Like, I need all these automations. I need X, Y. I'm like, it's beneficial. It helps. But just make some freaking phone calls. Like, if you do that, you will be successful.
Oh, yeah. My team was hand dialing for 2 years. Hand dialing, cold calling. Yep. We're great. We got so many deals that way. So, yeah, just do it and figure it out the nuances later, I think.
100%.
I think getting to proof of concept as quickly as possible is one of the most important things.
Yep.
Because otherwise you're not going to keep doing it. You got to get a win, not set up 10
Exactly.
entities.
And one thing that I've learned just over the years of being around it and being in business, it's not the smartest people who succeed ever.
No.
There are a lot of really stupid millionaires.
Yeah, there are. There are.
But
Yeah.
all they do is just take more action than you do.
Yeah.
Like, so that's just business.
Yeah.
Whoever takes the most consistent and, well thought out action wins.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, it's and it's got to be funny for you having some of these huge names come in, and you're like, oh, you're just a person.
Yeah.
It's like when you become an adult one day from being a high schooler or a college kid.
Yeah.
You meet all these adults that you're working with, and you're just blown away of, oh, you're just me a few years older. And
Exactly.
It's humbling to a certain extent. And
Everybody's
it's
trying to
terrifying.
figure it out.
Yeah.
That's the funniest part too.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are people who they might have figured out a few more steps than I have.
Mm-hmm.
That I totally respect and acknowledge that. But they're just trying to figure out their next thing too.
Sure.
And no one really knows. And that's the other part too. Like we give our students frameworks, and real estate's a little bit easier, but with these other business ventures and stuff like that, no one really knows. Everybody's just giving out their best guess, and they might have seen some success here. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will see the exact same success running their playbook.
Yeah.
With land or with real estate, it's a little different because it's been around for so long. The methods are pretty tried and true. You can always put a little spin on it, right? That's why we're doing novations now, running Facebook ads, but it's still the same core business. But with the newer businesses and stuff, no one knows.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and technology's changing so fast, but it's everything is the same as ever. For hundreds, thousands of years. But Javi, as we move towards the end, one question we ask every guest is, what's a question you wish we had asked you that we did not ask you today?
I don't know if there's a question I wish you guys would have asked. But I guess I think the thing that I want everybody to know, if you are thinking about getting into business or just jumping into entrepreneurship, it isn't as hard as we make it out to be, or I guess other people make it out to be. I think if you truly want to have a great life, you should figure out some way to get involved in real estate, whether it be through land, whether it be through building a wholesale business. There's no other vehicle that I have seen that you can start for minimal capital and have the upside be so big.
Yeah.
All these people who are thinking about doing e-commerce or drop shipping, stock trading, all of these things require, number one, more capital than they typically have available to them, and a lot more work than building a land business or a wholesale type business. So if you're looking for the best possible upside, I think it's building a real estate business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's fantastic. And I think one of the biggest themes of the show is be humble, take action, and you're going to be able to find success in something as long as you're self-aware. Mm-hmm. But Javi, where can people find more out about you?
Number one, you guys can go to javchav.com, javchav.com. So you can connect with me there. Also, would love to have you in any of our wealthy programs, wealthyuniversity.com, and obviously Instagram, and you'll find me there. Just type in Hopchav and I'll be in there. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Javi, this was fun. It was great to have you on the show. And this is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkos with the Big Picture Blueprint signing off.